Hennie Loubser from Microsoft is with us here on the desk to discuss growth of African markets by Microsoft. And you've got a proud record, South Africans. Clearly, Hennie Loubser is not Greek. You've got a proud record there. I remember Paul Maritz being very instrumental in the early years of Microsoft. I think he was here 14, 15 years. Again, Maritz being a South African. Is it still so? Are you guys still punching above your weight globally in Microsoft?
I think that there are quite a few South Africans that hold senior positions in the company. I think the country has produced some good talent over time. I'm not quite sure that I'm in the same category as Paul Maritz, certainly. But no, I think that South Africans are well represented still in the company.
But my question is why? Clearly you've got a big portfolio, an African portfolio you look after. Do you have particular advantages here in South Africa from a Microsoft perspective?
Microsoft has been in South Africa for a long time. If you look back in history, we started in '92. And I think in those early days, a lot of groundbreaking work was done in South Africa in terms of how to penetrate emerging markets. If you look at Microsoft business globally today, the emerging market contribution to Microsoft growth is significant. Brazil, China, and other parts of the emerging countries. So I think that South Africans have got a good position, an advantageous position to understand how to do business in emerging markets. I wouldn't say we're the only people, but certainly I think that has played a role in helping South Africans do a good job in Microsoft.
As Alec mentioned, you do have quite a large portfolio. Where are you finding challenges and opportunities on the continent?
Yeah, the opportunities in Africa is massive in some of the big markets. If you look at markets like Angola, Ethiopia, Ghana, Nigeria, you know, the GDP growth in these countries are between 4, 6 to even 8% annually. The IT sector growth in those countries is even higher. We're talking about between 13 and 20% growth. So there's no question about the opportunities for ICT on the continent. Certainly growing a lot faster than in South Africa, which is why we're putting so much emphasis on establishing ourselves, making sure that we do a good job of partnering with governments and businesses in Africa. At the same time, though, there's some real obstacles in the form of corruption, security, infrastructure. These don't go away overnight, as we know. But we feel good about the progress that's being made. If you look at how we look at the success of our business, both in terms of our own growth, but also in terms of the piracy rates, we feel it's coming down over time. We see people developing a deeper appreciation for the need to protect intellectual property and to promote that. One of the examples is Mauritius, a country where in 1997 we started working with the government there to promote the protection of intellectual property. At that point in time, piracy was above 80% in a country like Mauritius. Yeah. Today, the piracy is down to just about 50%, which is a very good indicator. And that also allowed other companies that is based on intellectual property to go and establish themselves and make a contribution to that.
Sounds like Somalia, 50% piracy. So for every one product you sell, somebody steals one.
Absolutely. That is the reality, and it's not only software that's impacted by that. There's obviously other industries like the music industry, textile industry, publishing, and we're partnering with those organizations. And I think the job that we're doing is to say that more importantly, we're trying to help the local economies diversify. We're making a big investment, for example, into innovation, getting people in the continent to develop IP that can be used and sold in the continent. You may have seen we launched an initiative called For Africa, and this initiative puts a lot of funding from our corporate headquarters directly into Africa. And one of the big focus areas for Africa is to go and identify youth application developers, people from school or university, to come and develop mobile applications for the problems in Africa. To date, just in the last 18 months, for example, through that initiative, we've helped incubate 12 startups with some seed funding in different countries in Africa. So that's how we see this thing developing.
Hennie, you mentioned Mauritius and you've had success there on Piracy. But isn't this a bit of almost like mankind, your higher self fighting your lower self? If you go to Nigeria, how much of the Microsoft product is being pirated there, for instance, given a different state of development to Mauritius?
Yeah, it's a valid point. The piracy rate in a country like Nigeria is still very high.
What do you call very high?
It's above 80%.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, you'll find that when you look at how we're working with government in Nigeria and the large corporations in Nigeria, they're very much committed to using the software compliantly and pay for that. So I think there's a big job to be done there. Unfortunately, the reality when you look at a commodity like software, particularly in the way that we've distributed software over time, where it was based on putting bits on a CD, you'll find that it's a very lucrative business if you do it illegally. And so a big focus of ours is to look at how we help people understand the risks of illegal software. And we've done a study with IDC that shows there's a real risk from a cybersecurity point of view when people use software that is not genuine, or software that typically comes with other software bits on the CD.
Can't you plant a few bombs in there? I mean, isn't that, surely there are hackers all over the world. There are people who make a living out of this. If they're stealing from you,
must be regulations come into play.
Regulation.
Yeah.
Regulations are, it's like we got great rules in South Africa. We just don't. When last did you see people not going through red robots? Not a single day. And a similar situation here. Don't you fight fire with fire, or does Microsoft keep above that?
No, we've launched a very significant initiative, not along the lines of being hostile, but along the lines of working with local authorities to expose the real culprits in this process.
So no viruses in your CDs or in your downloads.
Exactly. We started a digital crimes unit, and this crimes unit work across the globe to combat cybersecurity threats. And we've been very successful in uncovering some of these threats, and they come in very many different forms.
Do your colleagues in Microsoft, given the environment that you're looking after, do they tap into you to say, can you help us with particular problems? And what problems would those be that you would see that they wouldn't see in other parts of the world?
Yeah, I don't see many unique problems in Africa that we don't see in other parts of the emerging markets, to be very candid. Fortunately so. I think that where we make a bigger contribution in my mind in Africa is that we're helping the company to think differently about which product and how do we get product to market. I think in Africa it's an interesting phenomenon where the use of mobile phones as one of the first devices to get access to the internet is fairly unique, and people are surprised to see that Nokia as a brand has been so widely embraced in Africa. And now that we bought that company, we're now working very hard to get the company to help us so that we can take our smartphone, which is typically a high-end device, into the lower end of the market on the back of the strong Nokia brand. So the African consumers, the behavior and how that will help us make an impact on the continent is a very significant contribution that we're making there.
So there was a future for Nokia after all. I thought that was the end of it, almost like BlackBerry. But it's landed up here with Microsoft.
Yeah, all the fruit salads aren't conquering Microsoft clearly.
Absolutely not. And we're very proud that just yesterday we launched the first Microsoft Lumia device, the 535 in India. It's going to be in Africa in a few weeks' time. It's the lowest cost device that we've launched. And I think it's going to help our consumers to get access to high quality, great capable device in the local market.